You open your eyes and expect to have a relaxing day. You've slept in late. You've taken the week off work months in advance. As you make your coffee, you absentmindedly browse social media when you see something odd. People are posting about ATMs and banks limiting withdrawals to $40 or $50. That's odd. Then you get a text notification from a bullion dealer telling you to act fast. Gold is up 17% and silver is up 11% just this morning. You search for more info on what's going on, and you find that the Dow Jones is down thousands of points and trading is closed for the day. Bitcoin is down 23%. European markets have suspended trading due to quote unquote panic selling. You start seeing rumors online that Deutsche Bank may be insolvent, partially due to exposure to derivatives. You read similar rumors online about JP Morgan Chase. Has the bubble finally popped? And with that, welcome to the GG Bullion podcast, also known as the Very Good Ones podcast. And my name is Len with GG Bullion. And today we have Oren from his YouTube channel, the Silver Hermit. And I will put his link in the description. And also Brian from his YouTube channel, Mountain Bullion Entertainment. And just so everybody knows, none of us are financial advisors, and nothing in this video should be considered financial advice. So, hello, guys. How are you doing?
Hello, hello. How are you doing?
Doing great. It's great to be here.
So, yeah. So, Oren, I don't know if you guys wanted to introduce yourself really quick, kind of what you're all about.
Well, I'm just a simple person from Israel who has been stacking gold and silver for years and writing about it also. I'm very concerned about what's going on in the world in general, politically, economically. And lately I've started making videos about it, about, the knowledge that I've gathered over the years. And I used to make content in Hebrew. Now I do it in English to address a wider audience. And as I said, I'm very concerned about what's going on nowadays.
And then, Brian, did you want to introduce yourself to the audience?
Sure, you bet. I'm just a regular guy with a YouTube channel, longtime stacker, highly interested in the metals. And a big reason that I started my YouTube channel is I'm trying to spread the word on silver. I hope that a lot more of the middle class and lower class Americans can take advantage of it before the silver bull run starts. And I just enjoy, talking about silver, talking about gold, and sharing my knowledge about the metals with people.
All right, great. So that kind of little opening thing that I read, that little fictional scenario, I kind of wrote that up in about 5 minutes. And that kind of encapsulates, what I could see happening. I mean, what do you guys think about a scenario like that where the stock market crashes, the trading suspended, banks are limiting the amount that one can withdraw, possible insolvency with large banking institutions. Like I think in there I mentioned Deutsche Bank and JP Morgan Chase. How do you guys think that would play out, and what might cause that? Because it seems like we've had a bull run in the stock market since at least 2010. Maybe a little dip from the 2020 times, but what do you guys think about that?
Well, I think a big factor that could contribute to something like that would be the amount of commercial real estate being held on regional bank and small banks books. A lot of the commercial office buildings have been receiving decreased cash flows, ever since 2020. There's been a lot of people who went home for work. A lot of the companies have adjusted well to not needing office space, and so that's partially contributing to why in Denver, for example, close to me here, About 30% of the office space is empty. You know, and so that's a pretty big chunk of potential income that they're losing. And of course, a lot of these loans are going to have to get refinanced in the years coming up here. And as of right now, they're looking at some pretty high rates. And so before they start cutting the rates, as you know, especially you know, right here in our immediate future, as these come up to be refinanced, it's going to be very difficult for some of these companies. And you know, if the banks have to eat these loans, these are huge loans because the buildings are so expensive, of course. So that's something that could contribute largely to a scenario like you're talking about.
Mhm.
Yeah. I want to point out what you've described is a deflationary scenario. It means that suddenly the companies are going bust, and the amount of dollars in the system is collapsing, and the economy is contracting. Now, this is what we would expect in a normal financial crisis, because the system is so levered and there's so much debt. And when companies go bust, then the amount of money contracts. Now, and this is what most people expect to see in an economic crisis. But the thing is that in the past decade, since 2008 to be exact, the Fed has been trying to fight this deflation. Like the system wants to contract, but the Federal Reserve doesn't allow it to contract by using a zero interest rate policy and quantitative easing. So they're pushing to the other way. They're trying to expand the money supply, to inflate. And we never knew during this past decade, we never knew who's going to win, because you can have a huge contraction, but you can also have it the other way for inflation to just run amok, to get out of hand. And then you're going to have a crisis, but it's going to be inflationary instead of deflationary.
Yeah.
Now, I have to say, just a second, I have to say that in the past, during deflationary crises, initially the price of gold and silver didn't go up. It went down because there was a drop in industrial demand. But after the Fed went in and started inflating it again, then you saw the price of gold and silver rising. So I think the jury is still out on what we're going to see in the next crisis, which feels as though it's right around the corner. So we could see the price of gold and silver just take off, as you've described. But we can also see that the price drop for a while,
Yeah.
as happened, for instance, in 2008, 2007, 2008. And then after the Fed tries to inflate the bubble again, then you're going to see the price take off. So people need to be wary of that. People shouldn't get discouraged if they see this initial drop. This is why I try not to give definite scenarios, and because we never know exactly how it's going to play out.
Yeah, and that's also, you know, reminds me of in 2020, uh gold and especially I think silver dropped, spot price dropped near $14 an ounce. And you know, it seems like when that happens, you know, within a year and a half, 2 years, it usually spikes up historically. Um, but it does seem that ever since the whole housing market collapse, I, from from my perspective, it seems like policymakers have been propping the economy up almost through, I guess, artificial means, like you mentioned, the 0% interest with the Fed. And I guess, you know, I'm not super well versed in MMT, like modern monetary theory, but proponents of that would probably say, like, well, that's good. We can just print the money. It's all fake anyway. That's kind of the gist I get from the MMT proponents. So, I mean, I guess
I,
what I'm kind of asking is, like, what issues do you foresee with that kind of stuff?
you know, I
Brian,
feel
want to go
like
first?
cutting to that
Oh,
and
anybody
some
go ahead.
added a lot of fuel to the. Oh, sorry about that. Can you guys hear me?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
I feel like cutting to the 0% interest rates added a lot of fuel to the real estate bubble, that we're still in. So all these people bought these houses, and you figure with those 0% rates, they were able to really kind of max out the square footage of the house they could get, or how nice of a house they could get. And now we're kind of just stuck in this holding pattern. In regards to the price for the metals, it's really hard to say exactly how it would unfold, like looking at old charts and stuff. Like you guys were saying, it got down really low in 07, 08. In 09, it started picking up. And you figure from, about where we are right now in 2009, right about March, it from there over the next year and a half, it basically doubled in price. It went from like 928, and it went all the way up to 1800 something. And then the following year, they had a pretty good price cap. I think it was like 1700. And then, after that, it dropped down again pretty significantly. And then, you look at, 6 years from there and about 12. And so it is something where, when these bull runs start, I would encourage people to be cautious. If it's starting to get to where the price has doubled in a relatively quick time frame for something like silver, there's probably going to be some pullback. So buying it, and of course I don't know for sure what'll happen. So it's really hard to gauge these things.
Mhm.
Yeah. Like I
Yeah.
would say that the big question is whether we are getting close to the end game or not. And when we're talking about the end game, we're talking about the notion or the danger that the Federal Reserve and the federal government will not be able to inflate another bubble once this one pops. You see what
Yeah.
I mean?
Yes.
The question is whether they will overdose on QE. And
Yeah.
the meaning of that, well, first of all, policymakers don't have that on their radar at all. They're not even considering, to the best of my knowledge, they're not even considering the possibility that if they try to inflate another bubble, then the public will simply revolt. And by revolt, I mean reject the US dollar. And then you're going to have this hyperinflation. There's people trying to dump the dollar in exchange for any useful and commodity which preserves its purchasing power better than the dollar. And of course, the primary candidates are gold and silver because they are commodities. They belong to the commodity space, and they have this monetary history which spans thousands of years, and they have an infinite shelf life. So they are, of course, the prime candidates to serve as money in the absence of any other stable currency.
Yeah. And
So
they certainly are also easier to store and to bring around than stacking barrels of oil, for example.
definitely,
Less of a
or
fire
food,
hazard.
or clothes, or any other thing.
Mm.
Although people are probably going to hoard all these commodities at first because they're
Yeah.
not going to know what to do, and because many are not even aware of gold and silver. Only after like gold and silver like take off will people start to become aware of them, I think. And I think it's just starting right now. The thing is, we don't exactly know whether we are at the end game, yes or no. Like the policy makers think that they can repeat what they've done in 2008. Like if we do get a deflationary collapse, so they come in with QE again and they inflate another bubble, and we're going to have another round of make-believe growth, and we're going to have like another decade of the stock market going up. They think that after a short crisis, a short recession, we're going to be able to go back to normal, inflating. And I think they're not aware of the possibility of it ending, of the public rejecting the dollar. Now, are we there yet? Yes or no? I don't know. We won't know until it happens. But we need to get prepared for that eventuality.
No, I think that's a really great point you make about people rejecting the fiat currency, because theoretically the Fed can always, or more money or more fiat can always be printed. They can always try and prop that up. But at some point when your inflation is up so much and your purchasing power is next to nothing, then
Yes.
you have no use for dollars, which would cause a worldwide crash, as the United States is the global hegemon, essentially.
If I
It
may,
would
I just
be.
want to add another point. Look, 2008 was more or less a financial crisis.
Mhm.
But what I'm really concerned, because as time goes on in this system, in this fiat monetary system, people are becoming more and more dependent on government handouts and stuff like that. And what I'm really afraid of is that in the next crisis, you're not just going to have an economic crisis, it's going to be a social crisis as well. Like you may see riots in the streets because people who are dependent on government handouts are suddenly going to be left with nothing. And if dollars don't buy anything anymore, so it doesn't matter. Like the government can send you dollars, but if they can't buy you any food, it doesn't help. So you may end up with people actually going hungry and riots in the street. Now, this is a true concern. This is a true danger. This is why we're doing what we're doing, that we're trying to prepare for it. Because in certain scenarios, I can see this turning very nasty.
Oh,
Yeah,
absolutely. I
that's a
can see it
yeah,
being
that's a really good
catastrophic.
point.
Yeah, Brian, did you want to jump in? Sorry, I know we've kind of been talking.
Oh yeah, yeah, it's no sweat. I that's a really good point, and especially bringing up, how dangerous it could get. I mean, it could get really scary. Um, and it's also a really good point. Are we looking at the end game? Because if we are looking at the previous charts and trying to gauge what might happen to the metals based off those, you might just have to throw all that stuff out the window if we entered an end game scenario.
Yeah,
Yes.
and I think as stackers, for the most part, aside from the my poured bars that I sell, and if I'm doing any transactions, um, I look at the price, the spot price plus the premium, etc. But really, when I think about my stack, I view it as how many ounces do I have? How many grams of platinum do I have? How many, that's kind of how I view it. And I would guess that you guys probably view it in the same way, because it is money.
Absolutely.
Yes. I want to say something. If people want to get a sense of what the hyperinflation feels like, they can look up, Google the price of a gold mark in Weimar, Germany, in Germany during the hyperinflation of the 1920s. And the chart is logarithmic. It means that whenever you go up a notch, that's the price is going up 10 times. And you just see it going from 100, 1,000, 10,000, 100,000, million, 10 million. It goes on and on and on.
Yeah,
When
and
the currency collapses, because look, we are linear beings and the economic world can sometimes behave exponentially, and we're not used to thinking exponentially. So, when you talk to people, even stackers, they think, oh, the price of silver can go up to $50. You know what? Maybe one day it's going to be $100, maybe $200 one day, sometimes in the distant future, because they take what happened in prior years and they try to extrapolate it to the future. But sometimes you reach events which, look, when the dollar collapses, okay, so the price can jump overnight by orders of magnitude. Now, I'm not saying it's going to happen. I can't guarantee anything, but we need to be ready for such a scenario. Why should we be ready? Because, for instance, if the price of silver goes to $100, there may be some people who rush out and sell it, only for it a week later to be traded at $1,000. per
Right,
ounce.
because it just keeps
And they're going to
inflating.
lose out. They're going to lose everything because the fiat that they got in exchange for the silver is going to lose all value. Now, it's not as though gold or silver are doing anything. They're just sitting there. But if the dollar is collapsing, then suddenly in the terms of a price of an ounce of gold and silver, that you can see it advancing in leaps and bounds. And this is why I say, be very careful. Don't do anything rash. Even if you decide to sell some of your gold and silver, don't sell it all at one time. Do it
Right.
slowly, gradually.
Oh,
And
absolutely.
you need to be aware of what is going on in the economy in general and ask yourself, is the dollar hyperinflating, yes or no? Right now, it is not. Right now, we just have inflation. But the moment if we transitioned into hyperinflation, now there you're going to see some fireworks.
Yeah, and I think, bring up Weimar Germany as an example of this, and bring that back to not only being an economic issue, but a major social issue. I mean, look at the history of Weimar Germany and what it turned into. And then we get the Second World War, let alone in Weimar Germany, with socialists and the Freikorps and the thing I probably can't say on YouTube, fighting in the streets. Things got very bad. And I think a lot of people don't think that can happen, that we're almost in like a post-history society, or we're at the end of history.
Yeah, that'll
I
never
think
happen to
that's,
us, right?
yeah, exactly. Like just like the Spanish flu, big pandemic, that could never happen to us. Boom, 2019, 2020. Uh, but I am very concerned about the future, especially in the social aspect, that this could get potentially very, very bad. Uh,
Right. No, I'm real glad you guys are talking about that stuff. I think something that gives you a big advantage with having a stack in that scenario is because people will have tangible assets that they could potentially sell, that might be paid off. Maybe it's their house, maybe it's their car, but they're selling this huge item, that's going to bring a bunch of money in, and then that's going to expose all of that profit to potential continued inflation. Whereas if you can just bleed off, little bits of your stack here and there, you're just going to go, trade in, one ounce and get groceries, then you've only lost that one piece of a real asset, just this little bit of it, instead of having to sell something big at once.
yeah, and it's good. I think for a catastrophic failure of the monetary and a breakdown of the social system, to be honest, I think it's good to maybe stack a little bit of vodka and tobacco and medication. But then those are things that people are going to want or need. But then we get into the whole thing of the problems with the barter system, and that's why we have a medium of exchange. That's why we have money. That's why we have gold and silver. um, so that's something as well. And we can keep talking about this, but I did want to kind of bring up something that's been in the news a lot lately, even with gold hitting a nominal all-time high. um, I don't know exactly when I'm going to be posting this video, but as of you know I believe market close this week, or last week. But Bitcoin has been in the news a lot. Crypto has been in the news a lot. I've seen a lot of people on Twitter completely rejecting precious metals and whatnot in favor of cryptocurrency, Bitcoin specifically. So I'm curious to hear your takes on that, and also with a situation of a economic crisis, how you might see Bitcoin potentially playing out in those scenarios.
Something that I think people have a bit of a misconception on in regards to Bitcoin is, when you go to transfer it, especially if you're transferring a decent amount of money, it's going to take a while. The way that it's checked, it's not a very quick process. So some of the other cryptos will transfer pretty quickly, but that could be a burden also if there's an economic collapse, I would be concerned about that holding its value in an environment like that, especially if people start to get desperate and they're like, I'm going to offload all my crypto. I could see it losing a lot of value in a scenario like that. Personally, of course, I don't know for sure what would happen. If there was any event that disrupted the grid and people couldn't access their crypto, I could see it losing just an insane amount of value in a scenario like that. Um, and so it's hard to say for sure, but I'm pretty sure that we would see the metals outperforming the cryptos pretty handily in a true collapse type scenario.
Yeah,
Yes.
and of course this is all conjecture. None of us know the future, but just throwing that out there for the audience. But Oren, what do you think about that?
So I think whoever has been following my work already knows that I'm not a big fan of crypto, to say the least.
Mm,
And well, I try to look at it, from like the grand scheme of things, that Bitcoin may have been very good for the people who invested in it early on, but to humanity as a whole, thus far, it has been very bad. Because why? Why do I argue that? Because look, we've had inflation, and crypto was like this lightning rod to which the excess liquidity flowed. It was one of the routes in which liquidity flowed out of the system instead of commodities. If crypto didn't exist, if Bitcoin didn't exist, then I think this liquidity would arrive at commodities and, of course, gold and silver earlier, at an earlier stage, and then we wouldn't be able to rack up so much debt. The entire thing wouldn't be able to continue for so many years. And maybe because the longer we allow this to continue, the bigger the crisis that we're going to have to experience in the end is getting, because the debt is getting bigger on the national, corporate level, personal level. The bigger the debt, the bigger the crisis. And so I think crypto has done a disservice to humanity as a whole. And as for the question whether it's going to perform well during a crisis, yes or no, I simply don't know. And because I can see it going both ways. For instance, you can see crypto becoming very successful during a crisis, but then again, the government can take advantage of it and issue its own cryptocurrency, what we call a CBDC. I see gold and silver as the ultimate way because they are untrackable, for the private person to protect his freedom, his liberty, and his privacy.
mhm.
And I would like to see gold and silver becoming the solution, because I believe in liberty, and I want people to be able to preserve their privacy. I think it's going to be very bad for humanity if Bitcoin is going to win. Let's put it this way.
No, I pretty much agree with you there. And another thing with cryptocurrency, it seems like the state can control the, so to speak, the on and off ramps to that. Whereas with gold or silver, I mean, there you can trade for cash. It's much more private. I'm sure crypto bros would argue with me on that. Maybe we can have a debate one day. But it seems like increasingly now there's taxation on it. You have to, at least in the U.S., you have to file that on your taxes. And the government could theoretically just shut down the on and off ramps to it, because it's got to
Yeah.
go through some kind of banking system.
Oh yeah, they definitely could. I mean, they could shut off someone's crypto account, and there does seem to be a misconception that it's anonymous. It's not at all. They can easily see where the crypto is, and then of course, if you want to, you can go in and find where your cryptos with the actual blocks that it's stored on. But yeah, they could turn all that stuff off. And you never know. I mean, if it starts to go up in value a lot, I mean, we might see more hacking incidents. It's something that very well could go to the moon. I don't know how high it might possibly go, but I could also see it falling apart.
Mhm. Yeah, and I guess that's another thing with it. With some kind of crisis, I could see it going very high for at least some period of time, but I could also see it going to zero. So like Oren, like you said, I could see it going both ways, but in the if things get I believe that if things get catastrophic enough, like if things get bad enough, then the infrastructure, I mean, I guess you could have it in a cold storage wallet, but at that point when people are struggling to eat, um I don't know how well it's gonna perform.
Yeah, I don't know either. I mean, but we do know you guys were talking about the Weimar Republic, that people were buying houses with precious metals, and we're talking really affordable stuff. And so who knows? That is something that we can look back at and have that assurity that these are going to ride this well,
Mhm.
which gives them a huge advantage. Um, we just don't have a track record with cryptos to look at.
Yeah, that's true. The sample size, if you look at history, is extremely small for crypto, where with gold and silver, especially gold, it's pretty much all of recorded human history, at least since agriculture was really invented. So we have quite the track record and they're still used today quite a bit.
Well, and if you think about how much
There's
money is flowing into cryptos right now, imagine if, 10% of that money was going into precious metals. And,
yeah.
who knows if sentiment might change at some point. Um, and a bunch of those crypto bros started switching over to gold and silver, it could really add fuel to the price exposure for the metals.
Definitely. And I want to say there is one demographics that hasn't yet been, you know, hasn't yet acted, and that's the older folks. And I'm kind of counting on them. We keep saying baby boomers have done a lot of bad things in the world in general, but the good thing that the boomers can do right now, if they're not particularly technologically savvy, and if they because crypto is something which belongs to young people mainly, and I don't think boomers have even started trying to protect themselves from inflation. And if they opt for precious metals, which is something which is a lot more intuitive for a person which is not technologically savvy, then I think they can uh, shift this market. And it's sentiment has a great deal to do with it, because once you see, for instance, gold or silver performing well, or even for a while outperforming Bitcoin, and it's a game of percentage points, right? It's not dollars, it's
Right.
percentage points, and you can see a shift, and the shift can come very quickly.
Oh yeah, it could be really fast, especially nowadays, because you figure people can just get their credit card, hop online, go to a big Bullion exchange. I mean, it could be really rapid.
Yeah, and that what you brought up is something that I've noticed. Like I have some older relatives in their late 60s, early 70s that when Bitcoin hit whatever 68,000 US dollars per Bitcoin, um, that had bought some prior to it on an exchange or whatever, were asking me like, "Hey, I how do I even get into my account? I want to try and sell this." And it's whereas with silver, it's like it's a physical object that you can just sell. I mean, you can go to a coin shop, whatever, you can do private sales. I think precious metals are simpler overall, even for myself, which I do have some crypto. Most of those gains that I have made, I put into precious metals to lock it in. But even for myself, being a younger guy, uh, precious metals are so much simpler, and I'm also pretty risk averse with any, I guess, investments that I make, and yeah, precious metals are just more appealing, I guess, in that aspect, because convenience wise, like you said, Brian, you can hop onto a big bullion dealer online and get gold or silver or platinum or palladium shipped right to your door.
Oh yeah,
Eh,
and depending if they're not very picky, if they're like, oh, I just want to grab a monster box of whatever. I mean, it could be like, yeah, a few minutes for that transaction to process.
oh
And
yeah.
then that's more bullion off the shelf. In regards to the cryptos and people pulling out, I guess I probably should touch on, a certain amount of the crypto investors, their stuff will be staked. I had staked a couple of my different cryptos, like Cosmos, and if anyone's not familiar with staking, they pay you a percentage. It's so it's kind of more like a CD, if you will, or a money market. You're getting a little
Mhm.
interest on your crypto just sitting there, and they're using it to check other cryptos when they transfer. Um, Now, when you stake it, you'll have to sign this agreement, and then there's a staking period. And so, if somebody is heavy on something that they've staked, it could be up to 30 days before they can get access to that crypto. So, it's something that I think they kind of wisely built into the crypto market. So, a percentage of it like just can't move that quickly. But most people, I don't think, stake a significant amount of their crypto.
I know I have not with any of mine.
I want to jump in and say, people may hear me talk about crypto in such a negative way and think that I have this perhaps I don't like computers and I don't understand anything about technology. Well, I have an engineering degree.
Mhm.
And the thing is, why don't I like crypto when it comes to money, when it comes to your savings? Because I know from my studies that anything which is man-made can also be undone. That's
Mhm.
the problem with I've worked with the computer system enough to know that they can be unstable, they can have malfunctions, they can be hacked. They keep telling us that crypto is beyond hacking. Well, it's beyond hacking until they find a way to hack it. And I wouldn't trust all my savings or a large chunk of my savings to a man-made system, which I don't know how it's going to react in times of crisis. And if you want to speculate with Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies and you have the spare cash, go ahead. Do what you feel like. But when it comes to my savings and the stuff I want to hold on for the ultimate end game, then something as simple as natural that has a natural scarcity, such as gold and silver, is much preferable in my view. Maybe I'm old-fashioned, maybe I don't understand, but this is my view.
Yeah, that uh, I something that you said kind of made me think of this as, crypto seems like, I know analogies have been made between um, crypto frenzy and, for example, the tulip bulb market in the Dutch Republic. If you guys are familiar with that, if the audience isn't familiar with that, Google it. Basically, it's literal tulip flower bulbs were trading at extremely crazy prices. But crypto, it's speculation. I don't see it as money. I see it as speculation that people, that's what I do. I put some dollars into Bitcoin or Dogecoin or whatever it may be, and I don't really want to spend that. I just want to trade it in for more fiat, to get more money, to get more like either fiat or to put it into precious metals. Whereas precious metals themselves, while there is a market for speculation, it isn't pure speculation. Plus, they're tangible things with industrial uses, especially silver and especially platinum.
Right. No, I mean that's a really good point. I mean, because they do have uses, and I mean, silver has so many uses. Gold has some uses as well,
Mhm.
which I think does really set them apart from the cryptos. Just being basically a medium of exchange. With a lot of potential volatility. I see crypto as better than gambling, but I do see it as quite a gamble, and you need to really be paying attention to that market and be on top of it when things are moving, if people are looking to take gains out of the market. Um, and the thing is with gold and silver, it's just so much more safer. You're not going to be on vacation and not hop online for a few days or whatever and sleep through one of their pump and dumps. This is going to be something that'll be there. It can't go to zero. Um, and I think especially the industrial applications for silver, um, are really something that is going to put a lot of upward pressure on the price, coming up here in the next decade.
Mhm.
I had a discussion with a friend a few days ago about crypto and precious metals, and he told me, yes, cryptocurrency, that's speculation, but how is it any different from what you're doing with precious metals? You're speculating on precious metals. It's no different. And I try to explain that there is a crucial difference between crypto and the metals. It's because precious metals have an end consumer. They have the industrial consumer. So when we stack gold and silver, we are in fact keeping them, we are safeguarding them for the end user. Like someday, somebody, because they are a finite resource, of course. And it means that one day all the gold and all the silver is going to be dug out of the ground, or what's going to be left in the ground is going to be uneconomical to extract. And then the only source of gold and silver, for instance, to construct an electronic circuit or a piece of jewelry, the only source is going to be a stacker, someone who has that metal and is willing to sell it for the right price.
Mhm.
So
Right.
you're doing something. It's not because crypto doesn't have that element to it. There is no end user. There is no industrial consumer, that is. So they're just keeping it for other speculators who may or may not show up in the future.
Mhm.
But we're actually doing a service for the future consumers of precious metals. We are preserving them. We are um, because otherwise, if there weren't stackers, then the price of gold and silver would be much lower than it is today. It would still have the industrial demand, but the price would be lower. And so people would consume it at a much higher pace. So what we're doing, we're slowing down the consumption of gold and silver so that future consumers will be able to have some as well. We are doing a great service for the economy, just most people are not aware of that.
Yeah, that's a very interesting way to look at it. It's almost like stackers are like almost sort of a decentralized custodians.
Exactly, a decentralized depository.
Yes, precisely.
Yeah, that's a great way to look at it.
Yeah, yeah, that's very interesting because I mean, even the bars that I hand pour or the hexagons, people love those. Got to make some more of those. Um, but I fully expect, assuming humanity doesn't wipe itself out, that 500 years from now, those are going to be melted down and are probably going to be components in some technology that hasn't even been invented yet.
Oh yeah, highly likely, at some point. And who knows how soon it might be, but it's highly likely.
Yeah, yeah, I think that's a huge distinction between the two is that one is speculative, like purely you're holding it for other speculators, uh and the other is an actual commodity with uses. And I know which one I personally prefer, and I think we're all on the same page when it comes to that. Um, I
Yeah,
did want to ask real quick with both of you, because I know when we talk about precious metals, we gold and silver are no pun intended, like the gold standard when it comes to metals. But as far as platinum and palladium, I'm curious on both of you guys, what your view on those are, especially platinum.
Well, I like platinum because it's cheaper, or it's cheaper than it used to be.
Mm,
So the thing about palladium, I should say, both metals are not traditionally monetary metals.
mm,
And so I treat them more of a speculation. They have the potential of becoming, in an extreme scenario in which, we really have a hyperinflation, they have the potential to become monetary metals in themselves if people start stacking them. Right now, they are strictly industrial,
mm.
and but they are rare. They are very rare, and they may prove to be good speculations. And as I said, the price of palladium went up tremendously in the past few years, and then it went down back down. But of the two, I think platinum is more underpriced.
I would agree that
Yeah,
platinum.
I have not gotten too comfortable with the idea of them yet. Oren pointed out, they're not historically monetary metals. I have not been stacking them. It seems to me that platinum would be the way to go. I think that that would be, if someone was looking to dip into them, I don't know for sure how it would go as far as in a financial crisis. But I could see it being a fallback for a lot of people if they got to their LCS and all the silver was sold out. I could see them being like, "Well, what do you got?" And like, we got platinum, and then they'll pick it up in that scenario. I feel like they would.
Yeah, I'm curious how much, because there is like a social aspect, silver and gold kind of in our zeitgeist, is money. Like people kind of inherently recognize the value.
Well,
Uh
and to a huge degree, it's in songs. It's the most common currency, like in video games that little kids play.
yeah,
It's really ingrained in people to another degree above
yeah.
those other metals.
I mean, what do they use to represent Bitcoin? They use a gold
Mhm.
coin.
Right. Yeah. So people can like identify it as being money,
Yeah, but what I'm curious about is with platinum, because of its extremely high melting point, that we didn't really have the technology or uses for it until the mid 19th century or early 19th
Yes.
century. And maybe that has something to do with it not being viewed as much as a monetary metal and more as a kind of purely industrial metal in some sense,
Yes,
whereas
yeah.
gold and silver
Even
have.
the name of platinum, the meaning of the word platinum is small silver in
Yeah,
Spanish.
yeah,
And
Oh,
because
interesting.
people were it was difficult for people even to recognize it as a different element. They treated it as an impurity of silver
mm,
for a while. And the thing is platinum is almost too rare to serve as money. It's not common
mhm,
enough. Like still, you need it. You need money to be rare, but having it even too rare, that's a disadvantage in itself. So yes, I do see platinum as being an interesting speculation, but still, is like if I need to give people advice, keep it a small exposure compared to your exposure to gold and silver.
okay. So something that I guess I have been thinking about for a little bit, I guess with this bull run in the stock market that seems to be being propped up with so much capital flowing into cryptocurrency, especially Bitcoin, but the market capitalizations on those are getting quite high. And with gold hitting an all-time high recently, and silver being, a very low, if adjusted for inflation, to its previous all-time high, I believe in 1980 would be the real all-time high. Correct me if I'm wrong. And if you guys think that the price of silver is manipulated, or if it's purely market functions.
I
Well,
mean,
And
there,
I've
go
made
go.
my position very clear. I've made videos and gave interviews about the way I think both gold and silver, but particularly silver, has been manipulated.
I
And
love that 10 a.m. chart. I think that that's just so great that you put that together because people can look at it. And I didn't realize how much consistency there was with that time before
yeah.
you put that chart together. So yeah, that was really cool.
Oh, it's been going on for years and years and years, but it was particularly bad in the past few months that the price of silver is getting slammed at exactly 10 a.m. New York time, almost on a daily basis. Like, look, I think there's an overwhelming evidence, circumstantial evidence that there is that the price of gold and silver is indeed manipulated down. And I think I know who's behind it. I think it's the US government who's behind it. But never mind that. I mean, every manipulation is destined to fail because it's opposed to the laws of economics. You're trying to sell something at a much lower price than the free market would otherwise price it. Then you're discouraging production and encouraging consumption. So you're creating a shortage. You're creating a physical shortage by manipulating the price down. So you're kind of cutting the branch on which you're sitting. So and I think especially in the situation of inflation, persistent inflation, I believe that this manipulation is going to end, and we're going to have true price discovery for gold and silver. And this is why I stack in preparation for that day.
Yeah, I mean, it seems to me that from in my opinion, it definitely seems manipulated, that the price is being artificially pushed down. But that silver is rare enough and useful enough and has the value. I think that it would be relatively easy if a larger amount, like let's say every stacker got four of their friends to start, seriously stacking. I think that would probably break the manipulation right there, and that would be a relatively easy thing to accomplish. But it seems we're not there yet, because people have some kind of aversion. But it seems like once people get into stacking, they understand the fundamentals, they understand why, and they look, especially with silver, how undervalued silver is, that it would really take not too much effort on a grand scale, yes, but if each person got a couple friends into stacking, um, silver could really break out of that manipulation, and we would start to see some actual price discovery.
I mean, yeah, it seems highly likely. Because you imagine if, like you said, if it was 4 or 5 people, I mean, that would start to add up really quick. And if each of them just even got 100 ounces, I mean, that would put an extreme amount of pressure on the supply of silver. And yeah, we would probably see some price discovery in a scenario like that.
I
Mm-hmm.
think that the funny thing about people is that they want to see the price rising before they move, before they do anything,
It's
because
crazy.
it
Yeah.
gives them confidence to see, they want to invest in something whose price is rising. Now, the thing about a manipulated asset, the price is not going to rise until the manipulation is broken. And then you can suddenly see a huge move. I'd say almost overnight. I've given all sorts of scenarios as to how that may happen, but I've also given a scenario in which you're not going to see the official price move, the spot price move, but you are going to see premiums in the coin shops just jump overnight, become multiples of the spot price. That's another scenario which I can see. The thing is, this people you need to have this leap of faith. You need to get into this market before that event happens, because I think after the event, it's going to be very difficult to get gold and silver for the average person. That's the problem. That's exactly why there is a manipulation to prevent people. The manipulators know that people tend to chase price. And so they target the price in order to discourage people from getting into this market.
Right, absolutely. And then, and then people look at it, what's been happening with it for the last few years, and they're like, well, it looks pretty boring. It looks like the price is pretty stagnant, and that's another thing that might kind of scare them away. They're like, I want to put my money in something that might increase in value more, and it scares them away.
Yeah, but the stock market, the entire financial markets, they're not linear. They don't work. They don't necessarily rise gradually and in a very orderly way. And especially around the crisis, what kills people is not prices rising or falling. What kills people is the volatility, because they see prices, all sorts of indexes, they begin to go up and down violently. And this throws them off. Even if they had this a plan and they intended to do a thing, if suddenly prices are going the other way, it may scare them away. That's the sad thing. And this is why with precious metals, you need to have conviction. You need to keep the physical thing. You need to have them physically, and you need to have conviction. You need to have an understanding of the market and not allow any small drop to scare you away, because you need to expect that volatility to come when we're close to the target.
Yeah. So when it comes to the I guess price manipulation of silver, which I think there's good evidence for, like you said, circumstantial evidence, but evidence nonetheless. Um, I guess in your opinion, and I can give my own as well, but Oren, you said that you think it's specifically that maybe not only, but that the U.S. government is manipulating it, but there may be incentives in the private sector. But who do you think is really behind this silver price manipulation, the spot price? Because we have seen, almost a little tangent here, already seen a decoupling with the premiums. If you look at gold or platinum, the premiums are much closer to spot, where with physical silver, the premiums have been going up and up and up over the past couple of years. So there definitely is a decoupling there. But I guess what is the motive, do you think, or do you not know, behind this manipulation, or your best theory? Because I think that's something people often question when they hear or even see the evidence behind
Why
price
would they do
manipulation.
that? Yeah,
Yeah, yeah. Why? I'm
I
curious to
think
hear you guys'
I think it's
opinion.
perfectly clear. I mean, like look, because the dollar has been backed by gold and silver for such a long time before 1971, then since it has become a fiat currency, the price of gold and silver, the market price of gold and silver, exposes the degree to which the dollar has lost value. So it's obvious that for the dollar, gold and silver are its adversaries. If you are the chairman of the Federal Reserve, you wouldn't want people to see that the price of gold and silver is rising, because it's exposing the true rate of inflation, and it endangers your ability to manage the dollar. There's a strong incentive for the US government to try and manage the price of gold and silver, and as far as I'm concerned, they are the primary suspects.
right. I think you're totally right. And something when I'm talking with younger people about gold, what I like to do is tell them about the pre-1933 gold coins. And, the $5 gold coin, for example, that's just a little under a quarter of an ounce. And I'll tell them, think about it. When they minted this coin, this much gold was worth $5. Well, now go look up online how much a quarter of an ounce of gold will cost you. And they're like, oh my God, because it is definitively clarifying like how much devaluation has taken place when they look at it like that. And so, yeah, they don't want any attention to that. And then, of course, if people are losing faith in the dollar, they're not going to want to go buy bonds. And, their whole scheme kind of starts unraveling.
Yeah, I
Exactly.
mean, even however long it's been, 8 years or so, 9 years or so since I started stacking, a quarter ounce of gold cost about half of what it does today, and that's less than a decade.
Yes. I look at the price, for instance, of gold in euros. And
Mhm.
since I started stacking, the price of gold has doubled in euro terms. And I'm thinking about people in the European Union. They don't check the price of gold in dollars, I think. I think they look at the price of gold in their local currency, in euros. And it hasn't stopped. Like, it's been quite relentless. The price is setting new all-time highs right now, of course, in each and every conceivable currency, and especially in euro terms, in British pound terms, in Canadian dollars, in Australian dollars. Think about all the people of, leading nations, leading economies, people who have money are living there, and they see the price of gold not just breaking out, but being, at all-time highs for quite some time, like rallying continuously. I think it's just a matter of time till you see more people rushing into this market and changing the paradigm.
And what do you guys think is behind this with gold being at all-time highs right now? What do you think is behind that? Do you think it's mostly inflation? Do you think it's capital flight from other assets, or a lot from retail investors putting their money into it as a safe haven, a mix of all of those?
Yeah, well,
Well,
I mean, the central banks have been buying a lot of gold. So there's some pressure on the market. The Eastern countries have been buying a lot of gold. Um, but in January, the central banks bought like 39 tons. And then when you look at the price discrepancies with silver too, between us and like the Chinese market, um, I think that's something that's going to start affecting silver, and I think we'll see silver starting to catch up. At least that's my hope.
yes. I would say everything that Brian has said is true, but I think the main driver behind the price of gold and silver is the fact that they are so undervalued compared to other asset classes. I mean, like the stock market is at an all-time high again. A crypto at an all-time high. I think compared to, of course, real estate, compared to other asset classes, gold and silver have been consolidating now for 3 or 4 years, right? So
Mhm.
yes, gold is at a new all-time high, but it has just broken out after many years of consolidating. So it's not expensive by any stretch of the imagination. So naturally, when people try to take some chips off the table, try to reduce their risk, they're going to transition from overvalued assets to undervalued assets, and gold and silver are just sitting there. Silver, especially, extremely undervalued. So there's just this pressure. The fact that they are so undervalued, it's creating pressure towards them.
Yeah, and you mentioned real estate, and Brian, I believe before we started recording, you said that you had some thoughts on real estate, specifically commercial real estate, if I remember correctly, in that market and how it relates to precious metals.
Yeah, I'd be happy to speak on commercial real estate. I would like to touch on residential real estate right now, as
Okay.
far as it's still very high, and a lot of people are kind of priced out of the market right now. I came across an article from Fortune magazine, and what I thought was really interesting is they're projecting that 9 million additional homes are going to hit the market from just baby boomers over the next decade. So if you split that out, you're looking at about 900,000 additional homes per year. Right now in the United States, there's only about 665,000 active listings. I'm guessing that it won't be that smooth of a transition, and of course their numbers might be roughly off. But let's just say this is largely due to them aging, and so for the first few years in, it might be more like 5 or 600,000 houses, and then it might be up, over 1 million houses. Kind of towards the tail end of that 10-year period that they're talking about. But let's just say if 600,000 additional houses hit the market, let's say over the next year from now, I mean, that would basically double the current supply. And really what we're looking at, in my opinion, is the housing market is being propped up right now by a lack of supply. That's the biggest factor that's keeping the prices where they are. And something else that I thought was interesting that Oren had touched on earlier is that the boomers are one of the demographics that's likely to go into gold and silver. So not all of these people are going to be going into nursing homes or passing away. Some of them are going to be moving in with younger relatives. Some of them are just going to be downsizing because they don't need their big house that they raise their family in anymore. And my guess is some of that cash will flow into gold and silver in the same movement. So, but and I don't know for sure what's going to happen, but I would say for anyone looking at real estate, be cautious. We could see some big drops in prices, and some of those same people that are listing their homes are probably going to put some portion of that, even if it's a small portion, into gold and silver after they make those sales. So we could really kind of have a double-edged sword here where we see um, this causing the cost of residential real estate to be going down at the same time that it's causing the cost of the precious metals to go
Mm,
up. And
mm.
so we could be looking at a really interesting scenario. And I do kind of see the potential there that residential real estate and the precious metals could kind of be intertwined because of this.
Yeah, and to add to that, something that I kind of see at least on the ground, so to speak, is a lot of younger millennials and the oldest of Gen Z. Even if the home prices were to go down, a lot of those people would not necessarily even be able to afford to put their capital into it, and they would still be renting. And then, potentially, instead of buying a house, they don't have enough money to do that, or even a down payment, but they might have enough money to put some into a couple ounces of silver. But I mean, that's a whole can of worms with that, and we'll see how that plays out. But just an additional thought on that kind of popped into my head. I know a lot of uh, younger millennials are renting at family members' homes currently. Um, and I even know some individual, I know somebody in particular who inherited a home, could not afford the mortgage, ended up selling the house, and is now renting the house from the person that he sold it to. Uh,
Interesting.
so it seems, and it could just be in my area, but in the Detroit metro, but it seems like there's a decent amount of that stuff going on, and I don't know what that means for the economy.
Well, I mean, I'll tell you what I think can affect that is, see, right now the unemployment rate is something that we should take into consideration. This could end up affecting residential real estate as well. The labor data is a bit misleading because it's going to count part-time jobs as full-time jobs, and there's a lot of that right now. And then people who have been out of the workforce for like a year or something, they're not counted as being unemployed anymore. So once we see the residential real estate inventory start to kind of come back online and there's an abundance of it, there's not going to be as much money chasing those houses. And you know, because the unemployment data is a little skewed. So I think people are looking at it and they're like, wow, like everybody's employed. And there's an assumption, well, that means they can all buy houses. They're just sitting on the sideline. But I think what you said is correct. A lot of them actually aren't going to be able to qualify for the loans. Well, and especially not at the current prices.
Mhm. Yeah, and there's also, these large investment firms that are, I think, are going to be buying up these houses and are going to be able to outbid the average person in a lot of circumstances as well. So we might not really even see a huge supply on the market, or a drop in prices necessarily.
I mean, possible. Yeah, one of them, I think it was Imitation Homes. They had gobbled up a lot of the market in the Phoenix area, and they decided to offload a bunch of them in a relatively rapid time period, and it put a lot of downward pressure on the homes out there. So, if these big investment groups can kind of keep it together and hold on to them, yeah, that could be a problem for home buyers, if they can keep artificially propping those prices up, doing that. But whenever they do decide to pull out of the market, if they put a whole bunch of homes on the market at once, I mean, it burns that market. Well, as far as the values go.
Yeah, it seems like when we look at real estate or the stock market or cryptocurrency, or all these different classes of assets or investments, or speculations, and then we come to like gold and silver. It seems to me, from my perspective, that precious metals are almost the only thing that's as close as humanly possible to a sure thing. Everything else seems
Right.
to have a very questionable future. Whereas with gold and silver, it's like you can't really go wrong with it.
Right. I agree with that. And
You're not going to lose your shirt with them. That's the point. You're
Yes.
not going to make a lot of money holding gold and silver, perhaps. We should point out, look, if we are, as I think, going towards a stagflationary era, like we've had in the 70s, then people are thinking of the stock market and real estate as a way to protect themselves from inflation, because this is what happened in the past decade. But if you look further back in history, towards the 70s or other periods of high inflation, stock market is not supposed to do very well during a time of high inflation. And if we really do get a hyperinflation, usually real estate doesn't do well in such a scenario as well. It usually comes back later when the economy recovers. But during such an event, there's only one asset class that historically performed well. Now, of course, crypto is the wild card. It's a new asset class. We don't really know how it's going to perform in such a situation, in such an environment. But I want to put my money on something which has already proven itself. And
Me too.
in such a scenario, in such an environment, gold and silver usually perform best.
Yeah. Yeah, I definitely agree. I think we're all in agreement there. And one of my big things, I almost proselytize for precious metals. I try and tell people about the advantages to holding precious metals. And I guess the big thing, and I think you guys are probably similar, where you kind of want to spread the word. Um, but
Yes,
yeah,
sir. I am.
and that's the thing that I think about sometimes, is that it really, and I mentioned this earlier in the conversation, but it really, in the US population, it's probably less than 1% of people that are seriously like stacking silver and gold. Maybe a little more. It's hard because it is such like a uh, I guess secretive. The word is escaping me. It's a very discreet thing to have. It's hard to get good data on exactly how many people, but it really would not take that many people. Like if the word got out there and people jumped on it, oh, I understand the fundamentals of it, or even if I don't, people follow trends. They see a line of people outside a store buying gold and silver, they're going to think, hey, I should probably get some of that. And I could see I could see the price of silver and gold, at least priced in fiat, going up very quickly and being much more desirable. And it really wouldn't take that much of a change, all things considered, to start that process, I suppose.
No, I mean, I think that's a really good point. With like basically once the herd decides,
Hmm.
um, all the, I don't want to sound mean or anything, but the sheeple, I'll decide, hey, it's time to buy. Everyone's buying. Oh yeah, it'll have a significant impact on the price. You had asked about commercial real estate. The only other thing that I would touch on, in regards to that is something that's important to consider is these buildings are losing value as well. And so we're talking about really big buildings, with really big valuations. Um, there was a Business Insider article that was projecting an additional 20% loss in value for office buildings this year. And I mean, they're already down. Last year, a lot of them had lost value, and so that's going to be another thing really challenging for the people who are thinking about refinancing them. Um, if this thing has lost, let's say $40 million, because the numbers start to get big really quick. Um, it's something that's really going to have a negative effect on the banks that are holding these loans.
Hmm.
But yes, sorry to just to kind of jump in there with that.
Oh no, it's no problem. I know that this is kind of a broad topic that we're discussing, so we're kind of jumping all over the place. But yeah, it seems like there's so much fiat, whether it's government fiat, dollars, euros, zloty, whatever it may be, or private fiat, crypto, that so much capital is just being sucked into that. That it makes me very uneasy about the future because with my understanding of market fundamentals, like we should not be having the stock market at an all-time high right now. It seems nonsensical. Do you guys get where I'm coming from?
Yeah, the thing about the stock market, like it seems logical to us that it's overvalued and that it should come down. But inflation is a powerful force. And if we look at what happened, for instance, in Venezuela during their hyperinflation, their stock market was the best performing stock, nominally, I mean.
Yeah.
It was the best performing stock market that year, while as the currency was losing all value, and also those stocks were losing value. I know it sounds counterintuitive, but it is possible for the stock market to rise, like let's say 100%. But if inflation is 200%, then you're still losing money. Like the stock market is rising nominally, but it's still losing value in real terms. And this is the optical illusion. This is what I think is happening right now, and which is confusing many people. Now, whether the stock market is going to also fall nominally during a crisis, I don't know. Good question. I don't know. If we reach the end game, what you need to be focused on is the real value, the purchasing power of that asset that you're holding. And again, as I always say, historically speaking, precious metals were the ones that performed best in such a scenario. And this is why I went to that direction. It's not because they're beautiful and lustrous and shiny. It's not the reason. I see them as an instrument for gaining financial freedom, and freedom for the entire society is derived from financial freedom. So
Mm.
this is what I'm hoping it will allow us to go through, get past that crisis, and reach the other side of it with some of our capital intact, and we'll be able to deploy it in a good, in a constructive, healthy way, and rebuild the economy in a better way, and hopefully, rebuild our societies in a more sustainable way.
Yeah, that sounds wonderful. And I, I know, we've probably been going for about an hour and a half now. If you guys want to continue, that's fine. Also, anybody listening, let me know in the comments. Do you want longer videos? Is this about good? Let me know. But to get back to what I was saying, a lot of people, it seems almost, and I could see it going either way, where with precious metals being more commonplace, so to say, like a lot of people think like, oh, it needs to be a whole reset, it needs to be a cataclysm. But I could also see it being a relatively peaceful and stable just by the average person starting to put their wealth and their earnings into real money, gold and silver.
I
So
mean,
I,
it
I
could happen. A lot of people in India will have some, silver around the house. Sometimes it'll be in the form of jewelry or silverware. But if there is a cultural shift, I mean, it would be nice because I think it would help stabilize people's personal assets. Just to help stabilize everything overall.
yeah, but the only thing, when I imagine that scenario, then I think, okay, what will be the reaction from central banks? What will be the reaction from the government? Like there, I would assume, be pushback to that, and hopefully not in a violent form, but it seems like the government, the state doesn't want that. I think that is pretty clear. Uh, so
Yes.
that's kind of a who knows, but yeah.
Yes. Well, as you said, we need to wrap up. I'm
Mhm.
going to say a couple of things to that. Well, first of all, I don't think we're going to get out of this crisis without a bit of mayhem. Yes, gold and silver may help pacify and stabilize the world in the long run, but I think short term we're in for a mess. I think we're going to have a mess. And as for governments pushing back on the idea of going back to some kind of a gold standard, I think they won't have a choice. It's going to be either completely losing control over the system, or backing the currency, introducing a new currency which is backed by something, gold, silver, something. Governments do that out of necessity, not because they want to. And you have to consider that there were governments in the past that had a gold standard, and they didn't do that because they had some kind of an ideology. I'm sure that even past governments, they wanted secretly to print, to deficit spend, to print as much as they wanted. But they couldn't do it. They couldn't do it because there was a popular demand to back the currency with gold and silver. So they had to comply. And this is, I think, what we're going to come back to. So the governments that will adopt this will be able to stabilize their economies faster, and those who will object, then their economies will stagnate. They're going to be left behind. There will be eventually all governments are going to be forced to adopt a sound money. I'm hoping this will be the case.
Yeah.
Yeah, that would be great. I'm hoping we'll see that as well.
Yeah. Yeah, I think we're definitely almost coming up to a crossroads. Uh, how long that will go on until we reach that I guess end game state, like you said, we're in. I'm not sure. I can't tell the future, but I think with the state of not only the global economy, but the global social order almost, and how things are changing, that we're going to see some pretty big changes. I would venture to say within the next 10 years for sure. Definitely in my lifetime, we're going to see some monumental changes, even just due to inflation, let alone the other factors. So, yeah, any closing statements, anything else you guys would like to say?
Well, I would
Right.
like to say it was great to speak with you guys today. I'm so glad that we were able to get together. This was a lot of fun, and yeah, thanks for having us on.
Yeah, likewise. Thank you for having me. And I can ask everybody to check out my channel, the Silver Hermit on YouTube. I'm also on Rumble. I also have I upload all my articles to a Substack by the same name, so look me up. And thank you for having us. And everyone, get prepared because we're probably arriving at the critical hour.
Yeah, it would be a great time to go ahead and get a stack going if you don't have one.
Yes, I always I'm always a big advocate for people stacking, and I who knows? I'm assuming the people watching this probably already stacked, but if you're watching this and you don't, I would take a look into it. It definitely has changed my life for the better, and it, I think it's good for society as a whole. But thank you guys so much for being on. I would love to have you guys on again in the future, either individually or both of you again. And this is the episode one. My first time ever running anything like this, so it might have been a little bit disjointed. So hopefully, viewers cut me a little bit of slack. Hopefully, things will get a little bit more tight, or who knows, maybe this will turned out perfectly and I'm too self-critical. We'll see. But
Well,
thank you.
I I think
Oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I think now would be a terrible time to sell. I guess I'll just throw that in there real quick. Not
Oh,
financial advice.
yeah, of course. Yeah, nothing in this was financial advice. Thank you guys so much for being on.
Thank you.
I will put your links to your YouTube channels in the description. So guys, go check out Orin the Silver Hermit, and also check out Mountain Bullion Entertainment. Their links will be in the description and probably on screen as well. Thank you guys so much for being on. And that is the episode one. Thank you, everybody who watched till the end. If you watched till the end, comment the phrase LOL, silver is awesome. So I know you watched till the end. It'll probably be like one person. But thank you guys. And we'll have to do this again sometime.
Definitely.
Oh, you bet. Thanks a lot. I look forward to speaking with you guys in the future.
All right.